Talking to Mr. and Mrs. Blackman, their first interview. Well, joining us now from London is Johno, who is a former soldier who now works for a military charity called the Poppy Factory. They help ex-servicemen and women to adjust to civilian life. Thank you, Mr. Johno, for joining us.
You're very welcome.
What are the biggest challenges then that would be facing somebody in the situation of leaving the forces?
It's probably adapting to a new world. I served 12 years in the armed forces, and when we joined the military, the first thing is we find a brotherhood, unlike what we've known in civilian streets. So when you're working with guys and girls in a military environment, and you've got that close-knit community, and you live and it's back to back, you know, it's very hard that when you finally leave the armed forces and back into civvy street, to adjust to what you've left behind 12 years before. So then, and for myself as well, you know, transitional difficulties coming out from armed forces service, everything seems to have changed. The language is different, so I don't mean the English language, I mean the way we communicate. And of course, you know, suddenly you haven't got that person who's looking over your shoulder as you were looking over hers or his, so it's quite difficult.
And you actually had, and you talked about it quite openly, I know on your website, a really terrible time coming out. But
I did.
Moving on from that, what were the coping strategies that helped you start to make that transition?
Well, first and foremost, it took me 12 years, Alex, to finally admit that I had a problem, because inside I was breaking up, you know, and I wanted and yearned for the armed forces service. It's only when, you know, I probably went on and tried to destroy myself, if that's the right word, then I realised I really needed some support, and meeting my wife at the time, who was prepared to stand by me, because a lot of guys, when they come out of service, they lose relationships through their internal struggles. So for me, yeah, I eventually started getting support through military charities and GPs.
And you think there's enough support, do you?
There's probably more than there is today, and I came out in the mid-90s, and we're trying to make that, I think veterans as well as everybody else are trying to make that news and available to everybody, so nobody has to worry about where to go. So, but all the time there are more and more charities forming. Yeah,
and you've certainly done that and talk about it quite openly. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but Johno, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
To the